Awaken before dawn, because it is in this interval between worlds that the ancients believed time listens. When the sky has not yet decided whether it will be night or day, the air carries something rare, living silence. A fertile field where everything can be restarted. In ancient Egypt, this moment was not ignored, it was worshipped. On the stones of Karnak, priests engraved a rite that involved neither words nor offerings. It was only air, rhythmically timed with mathematical precision. 3-3-6-9. Inhale for 3, hold for 3, exhale for 6, remain in silence for 9. They called it Simatoi, the union of the two lands, not just Upper and Lower Egypt, but body and consciousness, blood and symbol. With each breathing cycle, they believed they were tuning their own organism to the frequency of the universe, and science is now beginning to confirm it. Research shows that this pattern increases cellular oxygenation, stabilizes the nervous system, and raises cognition by up to 18%. But there is something beyond biology. By breathing this way, something reorganizes within, as if a forgotten knowledge reopened in the chest. The day is born out of habit, but some choose to be reborn, with breath aligned to the infinite. Breathing is the first act of life, and yet it is the most neglected. We wake up already rushing. The phone vibrates, thoughts race, the body obeys. Air comes and goes as if it were automatic, and it is. But this automation comes at a cost. When we let breathing dissolve into automatic mode, we also numb essential parts of our consciousness. Today, almost no one breathes with presence. Air merely serves survival. But among the ancients, especially in Pharaonic Egypt, breathing was an act of reconnection. The day didn't start with tasks, it started with ritual. Breathing wasn't part of life, it was a tool for expansion. At the heart of this understanding was Simatoi, the union of the two lands. More than a geopolitical symbol, this term expressed the fusion between inner and outer worlds, between flesh and vital principle. It was this union that the initiates sought when practicing the 3-3-6-9 breathing cycle at dawn. The most fascinating part is that today, even without needing the legends, science points in the same direction. Recent studies show that conscious breathing practices can reduce anxiety, improve cognition, stabilize heart rate, and awaken altered states of perception. But this isn't a story about data. It's about remembering something that's been within you all along. Something that only awakens when you stop acting on reflex and start breathing by choice. Unconscious breathing has become the new normal, and the body, without realizing, has adapted to this reduced mode of existence. But something is lost in this automatism, the sense of centrality, of inner axis. Life continues, but off-center. There is energy, but without direction. We've grown accustomed to the shallowness of air. We inhale shortly, exhale quickly, and repeat this pattern all day long, never questioning what this is doing to us. But what if the way we breathe is directly shaping our thoughts, our emotions, and even the decisions we make? Neuroscience already shows that breathing influences the brain circuits related to attention, memory, and emotional regulation. But the real conflict is not in the data, it's in the gap between what we know and what we practice. We have access to this knowledge, but we don't use it. Meanwhile, millennial traditions already treated air as a sacred path. In Egypt, air was Shu, a deity who separated the sky from the earth and created the necessary space for life to exist. For them, it wasn't just oxygen. It was presence, clarity, order. Today, we breathe without listening. without realizing that each accelerated cycle is reinforcing the inner chaos we try so hard to contain. And deep down, we know there is something wrong with the way we are inhabiting our own bodies. The problem is not the absence of air. It is the absence of intention. But there are those who have broken this cycle. In 2015, Michael Carter, a British physiotherapist, traveled to Egypt for seemingly ordinary reasons: historical curiosity, a break from routine, the desire for silence. But what he found on the banks of the Nile was something else. During a guided tour in Luxor, he heard from a local elder that sunrise there was more than beautiful. It was medicinal. The guide explained that some locals maintained an ancient custom: waking before the light, gazing at the amber sky, and breathing in a very specific pattern: 3 seconds of inhalation, 3 of retention, 6 of exhalation, 9 of stillness. Michael listened but didn't immediately believe. Still, he decided to try it. The next day, he climbed alone to a stone terrace by the river. When the sky began to brighten, he closed his eyes and followed the rhythm. 7 cycles, then 7 more. Time felt different there, more elastic. On the 3rd morning, something changed. It wasn't a vision, nor a mystical altered state. It was precision, clarity, a kind of focus he had never accessed before. Upon returning to England, he decided to test the effect. He subjected himself to a battery of cognitive tests, including the UNBAC task used to measure working memory. The results were objective: an 18% improvement in performance. No other factors had changed. More than that, Michael reported that during the days he maintained the 3369 cycle, he felt more centered, more lucid, more whole, as if his attention were anchored in the present, not drifting between distractions. It was as if, for a few minutes, I remembered what it's like to be truly awake. Michael Carter was not the first to realize this, just the most recent. Centuries earlier, Egyptian priests recorded on stone walls what is now beginning to be studied with sensors and algorithms. At the Temple of Karnak, among giant columns, there are inscriptions describing breathing practices linked to the natural cycles of the Nile, not as metaphors, but as real rhythms, patterns used in rituals of internal alignment. The most well-known among them was called Simatawi, the union of the 2 lands. Symbolically, it referred to the integration between Upper and Lower Egypt, but on an initiatic level, it represented something more subtle: the convergence between body and spirit, between the vital flow and the inner silence. And this state was accessed, in large part, through breath. The 3369 sequence, which today sounds like a secret code, was simply part of the initiate's dawn routine. They weren't seeking miracles, they were seeking coherence. Each number had a function: 3 to receive, to activate the lower energy centers; 3 to retain, to consolidate the vital force; 6 to release, to purify what no longer serves; 9 to pause, to allow the void to reveal. This pattern mimicked the rhythms of nature, especially the fluctuations of the Nile, the floods, the ebbs, the silences of the earth before the water's rebirth. Today, scholars at the University of Oxford have observed that harmonic breathing patterns, those based on simple, regular proportions, promote a physiological state known as baroreceptor stability, a refined regulation of blood pressure and the body's autonomic response to the environment. Moreover, this type of breathing increases cellular oxygenation by up to 12%. In other words, it's not just metaphor, it's precision, biological mechanics. But the most remarkable aspect is that this effect only manifests when breathing is done with intention and rhythm. It's not enough to breathe. You must breathe rhythmically with awareness. And this transforms air into a tool, the body into a channel, and the present moment into sacred ground. For a long time, breathing was treated as a mere automatic mechanism. Inhalation, exhalation, repetition. But contemporary science is beginning to show that within this seemingly basic cycle lies a fine and deeply influential engineering of the body and mind. Researchers at Colorado State University conducted studies using breathing patterns based on prolonged cadences, including the 3-3-6-9 cycle. The results revealed something extraordinary. This type of breathing elevates heart rate variability, HRV, one of the main indicators of autonomic balance and overall health, by exhaling for 6 seconds and sustaining a 9-second pause. The body enters a state known as physiological coherence, where the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems begin to operate in sync. It's like tuning a biological instrument, and the resulting melody is calm, clarity, centeredness. The study also showed up to a 15% increase in the production of nitric oxide, a vital molecule for blood vessel dilation and improved cerebral flow. In practical terms, more oxygen, more focus, more emotional stability. But it's not only the body that responds. The mind also reorganizes itself. Breathing patterns like this one act directly on the locus coeruleus, a nucleus in the brainstem tied to vigilance, focus, and emotional processing. Rhythmic breathing acts like a switch. It reduces activation in centers linked to anxiety and increases access to the prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for decision-making, self-awareness, and contemplative states. All of this with one air cycle. No substances, no external stimuli, no dependencies, just rhythm, presence, and intention. And that's what turns an ancient practice into a revolutionary tool. It doesn't require blind faith or esoteric language. It proves itself in numbers and manifests in sensations. What was once seen as ritual is now mapped as technique, but the essence remains untouched. To breathe this way is not just to calm, it is to awaken. Scientific discoveries around rhythmic breathing don't stop at cardiac balance or cerebral oxygenation. They go further into less visible, yet equally fundamental, areas. The integration of perception, emotion, and self-awareness. A study published in the Journal of Neurophysiology demonstrated that the way we breathe can directly modulate the brain's electrical activity, especially in regions tied to memory and decision-making. When inhalation and exhalation follow a harmonic rhythm, the brain enters a state of greater neural coherence, where activity patterns stop competing and begin to operate in sync. Other research, such as that conducted by the HeartMath Institute, reveals that the state of cardiac coherence promoted by patterns like 3-3-6-9 encourages the controlled release of hormones such as dopamine and serotonin, creating a natural mood regulation effect with no need for external stimuli. Alongside all this, there is a field of empirical validation that grows quietly, that of subjective accounts. People who frequently adopt conscious breathing practices report transformations that go beyond what is measurable. An increase in intuition, lucid dreams, spontaneous reduction of compulsive patterns, and above all, a new relationship with time. The present stops being in an anxious prison and becomes a point of anchoring. But perhaps the most compelling proof lies in what cannot be measured, the change in the quality of presence. After just a few days of intentional practice, it's common to notice not only physiological changes, but also the emergence of synchronicities, meaningful coincidences that seem to arise as a response to a new inner frequency. This kind of experience does not replace science, it complements it, and it offers something no isolated data can deliver: a sense of meaning. Because in the end, this isn't just about breathing better. It's about inhabiting your own body with more awareness, about tuning your inner compass to the rhythm of the real, and about rediscovering, in something as simple as air, a path back to center. You don't need to move to the desert, renounce the world, or live like a monk to transform your life. Sometimes it all begins with an invisible but radical act: the way you breathe upon waking. The 3369 cycle is not just a technique from remote times. It is a silent reminder that the sacred is not outside. It is in the rhythm you give to your existence. When the first act of the day is a conscious choice instead of a conditioned reflex, everything else shifts in gravity. You cease to be a passenger of time and take the helm of your own frequency. The regular practice of this cycle reveals more than physiological benefits. It restores autonomy, refines inner listening, creates space between stimulus and response. And it's in that space that true freedom resides: the ability to act with presence, not impulse. By accessing this state daily, you create new pathways within your nervous system. You create clarity where there was noise. You create silence where there was only haste. You create grounding where before there was only reactivity. The philosopher Henry David Thoreau wrote, "What lies behind us and what lies ahead of us are tiny matters compared to what lies within us." To breathe like the ancients is a way of accessing that within with dignity. It's a gesture of return, not to the past, but to the part of you that was never lost, just muffled by the noise of habit. And when that gesture is repeated for 7 mornings, it's not just the body that wakes up differently, it's your whole life that changes direction. This was the first episode of the Alchemy of Sacred Breath series. Soon, new episodes will reveal how air can activate hidden centers of consciousness. Depending on when you're watching this video, the next episodes may already be available. Look for the series playlist here on the channel and dive deeper into this journey. If you enjoyed this content, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the upcoming rituals. In the comments, write, "I breathe with intention," and affirm your commitment to awakening. Share this with someone who needs to remember what they carry inside their chest. Remember, the body only becomes a temple when the soul returns to breathe with it.